Hi everyone, Alison Pearson here with the Children and Youth Planning Table. I was having a one-on-one with Kim from the Waterloo Catholic District School Board, and we started talking about belonging and the things that she's doing in a really intentional way around belonging. And I thought we've got to record this so others can hear it. So Kim, I know we were just speaking about some of the things you've done. Do you mind reiterating some of those things that you've been intentional about when it comes to belonging?
Sure. Thanks, Allison. So we were just chatting about, how I was so curious to know how belonging fit into my work at Waterloo Catholic with the educators I work with my colleagues, with students, and with families. So at first, I wasn't quite sure where to begin. Belonging felt really big to me. I knew it was a priority for the CYPT, but I had to really think about what belonging meant to me in my work. And it took a lot of time to kind of think about what that was. So I felt like I needed to dig into some resources to really know what belonging might be. I support the kindergarten program. And of course, we have a belonging and contributing frame in our kindergarten program. So I was lucky and I started there. And every time I reference that and I look at information within the belonging and contributing frame, I see something new. I learn something new. Even though I've looked at it so much, every day I open it up and I feel like I learned something new. I also started looking at Jean Clinton's work around belonging and Brene Brown's work on belonging. And of course, How Does Learning Happen, which really matches with our kindergarten program. I feel like those 4 core resources have really helped me to think about where belonging fits in my work. But it's taken me a long time. Like, this has been a year and a half where I will just ponder this idea of belonging, and I'll come across something else and I'll think, okay, there it is. And there it is again. And there it is again. There are so many places where it fits when we think about ourselves in our work, and when we work with our students, and when we work with our families, and when we work with our parents and our colleagues and our educators.
And how have you been bringing it to life in your teams, like when you're working with your staff teams at work and making some connections for them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So when I work with our educators, I try and send the message that belonging is our priority. That comes first. So sometimes, right now we're currently in a pandemic, so we're worried a lot about gaps due to school closures. So we'll talk a lot about the reading gaps that we're seeing for our kids and our gaps in mathematics. But what the research really shows is that relationships come first, and relationships can actually be more important and more impactful on student achievement and student learning than the best lesson. And that's interesting to me. So, if we think about going at those reading gaps through a sense of belonging and through relationship, that's a great place to start. When we think about going at those gaps in mathematics, same way. It's a great place to start. So, I think about prioritizing that place of belonging and just giving our educators permission to really spend time with that and prioritize that when they're engaging with their children in online learning and in face-to-face instruction. It's really important. I think it's more important than we've ever given it time and space for.
And when you think about, as the collective moves forward in the space, as CYPT moves forward and building out belonging, what's your biggest hope right now? Like, what are you thinking and excited about for our work to come?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think that I can only speak to that from my personal experience with the CYPT, right? So when I think about the CYPT, I think we all know that belonging is the priority, and that's what anchors us all. And it's the priority for all of us. But do we have a shared understanding of what that really means? Do we all really know what belonging entails? We have our equity let's see if I can remember everything, are attachment and relationships. And do people feel heard, valued, and included? So we're thinking about these pieces. And that's how we ended our last face-to-face meeting, with that great visual. But could we dive deeper into those pieces? Do we really know what those pieces are and how it impacts the families in our region? And it may not be the same for all of the families that we serve. Every time we work with a new family, a new educator, a new student, we might see belonging in a whole new way. So we have to be ready for new learning as we go down this path. So Brene Brown talks about belonging as the opposite of fitting in. And I think a lot about that. And where does that live in our pillars? And what does that mean for the kids in our community and our families? What does that mean for us? Right? Like there's just so much to belonging that we could just dive into. I think a lot about the kindergarten program, and they frame belonging with contributing. Does that have something to do with belonging for everybody? So if I feel like I belong to my community, am I making valuable contributions? Do I feel my contributions matter? Do our families feel that way? Do I feel that way when I come to a CYPT meeting? Do I feel like my contributions matter? Do I belong there? And once we get to a shared understanding of what belonging is, where's the action? What are we doing with that information when we work with children? So when we get to action, where does belonging fit in that action is really important. So I feel like those are really big, heavy next steps that are going to take a lot of thinking and self-reflection, because I don't think it's the job of the CYPT to tell me where to find action and belonging. I feel like maybe it's the CYPT's job to inspire me to ask myself those reflective questions, like, how can I think about belonging in my work? Where does it fit? And where can I prioritize it? And how can I bring it to action? And not because the CYPT says so, but because, the more we do with it, the more we see how great it is for kids, the more we dive into the research around it, the more we see how impactful it can be.